Am I wrong for telling my parents and my husband that I don't want to name my daughter after the sister I never knew? Ooh, it's baby name drama. My parents had a daughter before me, Summer. She was born with cancer and died when she was only 5 weeks old. I was born 2 years later, and her memory was very strong throughout my life. My parents weren't great parents to me because they were still in very heavy grief, and it made our relationship complicated. I remember they cried on her birthday every year, and they also cried on most of mine, and she was mentioned at every celebration. I remember for a while really wanting to hear more about her, but at some point, all the mentions of her were too much. It felt suffocating, and I felt less important. When they'd meet new people, Summer was the child they mentioned first, and the one they talked most about. Someone would ask what grade I was in or how old I was, and they'd say Summer would be in fourth grade or Summer would have been 13 today. When I graduated high school, I asked that my parents not to mention Summer during the celebration. When I graduated high school, I asked that my parents not mention Summer during my celebration, and they were so angry at me for wanting Summer forgotten. I took some time from them in college but was racked with guilt, and we ended up back in touch. I got married to my husband, Kale, last year, and now we're expecting a baby girl. My parents brought up how amazing it would be for us to name our daughter Summer, and my husband was 100% on board. He was pretty much agreeing before I had a chance to react. When I did talk to him, he was shocked I had any doubts and was ready to go full steam ahead. I told him I wanted our daughter to have her own name, and I didn't want her to carry the weight of the Summer who never got the chance to grow up. And so was all her grandparents really wanted to talk about. He said he understood, but to think how loved our daughter would feel. And he knows I think Summer is a beautiful name, because I do, but the history. I told my parents I wanted my daughter to have her own name, and they cried. They didn't really comment. They then asked if I was ever going to change my mind, and I said no. But then my parents and husband were talking and wanted to try and change my mind. They brought a list of pros to me on why our daughter should be Summer, and I told them I disagreed with the list. They argued back and told me Summer deserves to be honored. I said my daughter deserves to live her life as well. My husband said we would still be able to, and the name isn't that uncommon, and that my sister would be the only person to think of. My parents told me to think of what my sister would want and how I love my sister and miss her every day. For some reason, that broke me. I did not want to name my daughter after a sister I never knew. I'm not totally sure what happened directly after I was so upset, but my husband and parents think I was cruel to say it like that. So, am I the asshole? I don't know the pain of losing a child, and I hope that I never have to experience that. But my sympathy ends when you start to neglect and emotionally abuse the living over it.
My wife wants me to sell the business that I love because I'm away 4 months a year. So my wife, 35, and I, 42 male, have been together for 14 years. This year, after 9 years of university and residency, she's officially an MD. Anesthesiology, which is why it took 9 years. I'm incredibly proud of her. Now, I'm a tuna fisherman and charter owner. I own 2 boats and licenses through my company. I bought the first license at 21 and the second at 25. Both are now paid off. I make a very good living. I charge $2,000 a day for tuna fishing, per person up to 5 clients per day from July 15th to November 15th, and I'm booked at least a year in advance. But the money, while obviously important, is in the draw for me. This is truly my passion. It's the only job I've ever known, and I can't imagine my life without it. I left this year the first week of July, as I always do, but this year my wife has started insisting that I start thinking about selling the licenses and boats because she feels it's time to start a family, and that since she's a doctor, I should sell them to stay home, raise our children, and be home all year. I told her in no uncertain terms that I love her. I want children with her, but I am not now, or for the foreseeable future, selling my business or giving up the business that I have loved since I first went tuna fishing with my father when I was 12. I would be miserable without it. Now, I want to be clear, my wife has no power over my business. I got an ironclad prenup to protect my business and my home and property before we got married. It doesn't protect our personal assets or accounts. She'd still be entitled to half of our savings, and it's not like my wife was hard done by. She didn't pay a penny for her education. I footed the bill to the tune of hundreds of thousands. I paid for our home, bought her a vehicle to travel to school with, so there's no financial abuse on my part. Her issue with my job is that I'm not home for 4 months a year. We live in Ontario, Canada, but my charter boats are on the southeastern shore of Nova Scotia, and that my job is dangerous. She knew both of these things from our very first date. My wife is adamant that she wants this done, and it just isn't happening. She keeps saying how she'll be busy as a doctor and she can't be home to raise the kids, but personally, I don't see how that's any different from my situation. Aside from me actually having 8 months of a year off, I'm not sure why she thinks that I should give up my dream job now that she has attained hers. Personally, I feel that she's ashamed to tell her new snooty work friends that I'm a fisherman, even though I make as much or more as they do, as this literally began as soon as she started her new job and started hanging around with much higher class people. a class of people that I'm not fond of, but I would never tell her who to have as friends. She denies this, but the way that she suddenly altered her friend circle and started fighting with me about this as soon as she finished her residency and started her new job with her new friends tells me otherwise. She also has expressed interest in selling our property, 120 acres, to move to a condo in the city, and that's another area I just won't compromise. I did offer to her that we could look at buying a condo and living there during winters, but I'm not selling my property. She also doesn't want to accept that. I'm willing to compromise, but this is my home and we can afford it. I am not giving it up. When I'm not working, I'm hunting and fishing, sport fishing, not commercial fishing as my career. It's my favorite place in the world that is in the Atlantic Ocean. I have no intention of retiring for at least another 25 years, and when I do, I plan to give the licenses and gear to my son from a previous relationship. And the reason that I built this business to begin with, I never wanted my son to see me as a failure. He's 20 and is a mate on my second boat. My wife seems to think that I'm an a-hole because I want to be gone from her for 4 months a year. And because with my investment portfolio and business worth millions of dollars, I absolutely could retire and live well. I think she's the a-hole because she seems to think that I should be miserable in order to make her happy. I'm honestly not sure that my marriage can survive this, but there's absolutely no chance in hell that I'm selling my business or retiring. But am I wrong here? Am I the a-hole? I literally spent a decade making her life as easy as possible it could be. I'm in no way saying med school is easy, but she finished with no debt or responsibility outside of the home. Few med students can say that. I also feel there's been a big change in the way that she looks at me and my profession ever since she became a doctor. The profession that paid for her to get where she is today. I am who I am, a country boy who had a dream to make a living doing something that he loved. I feel like she feels that having a fisherman husband is embarrassing now that she's a doctor.
Am I the asshole for taking my fiance's dinner after he touched mine? My female 26, fiance, male 32, is blind. We don't disagree a lot, except he always gets bothered whenever I eat different food from what he's eating when we go out to eat. Like if we're having dinner out and I order something else, he'd instantly get upset and accuse me of treating him as less than when I just have different tastes in food. I just eat what he eats to keep the peace. I eat out alone as an alternative. But since he clearly doesn't trust me, he'd randomly touch my plate to see if I'm actually having the same dish. This has caused huge arguments between us, and I told him to stop doing it, and he said he would. We went out to eat 2 nights ago, and I ordered the same dish that he ordered. When the food arrived, he looked somewhat uncomfortable. I asked what was wrong, and he refused to say, and before I could even grab the fork, he extended his arm and his hand and touched the food on my plate. He moved quickly and started excusing what he did, saying he, quote, just wanted to make sure, but I lost it on him. I felt so grossed out and there was no way I could eat the food after he touched it. He tried to get me to drop it, saying I shouldn't be grossed out by his hand and that I overreacted, etc. But I grabbed his plate and told him that I was taking it as my dinner. He at first asked me to be rational and give the plate back, but I refused. An argument ensued and we had a fight. He then ended up leaving, started spam texting me, accusing me of being bitter, pathetic, and childish, and robbing his dinner. He went to stay with his friend who picked him up, and his friend sided with him, saying I was in the wrong. Even went as far as to say that I was abusing my fiance and financially controlling him when I pointed out that I was the one who paid for the food. The problem is magnified now with him wanting an apology and me refusing to give him one. My parents think I should have more patience and that this is just typical love spats between us, but I'm not sure. Was I the asshole with how I handled this?
Why does he want to make sure she has the same food as him?
There is an edit shortly after that says, I want to point out that this is not the case when we eat at home. He has no issue with me eating different food at home, but in public, it's a different story. In the original post, there's no mention as to why.
See, there's too many things missing. I don't understand this. Why does anyone need to eat the same thing as somebody else?
Am I wrong for not showing up to my sister's wedding and calling her ungrateful? My 29 male sister, Ashley 27 female, just had her wedding yesterday, but I didn't attend. 2 years or so ago, when she was going through medical depression and required treatment, I helped her a lot. She didn't have the money and I was the one who paid for everything. None of the other family helped and neither did her friends. In total, I probably spent around $15,000 to $20,000 for her treatment. Much later, when she had gotten out of her issues, I once urgently required some money. So I asked her and she refused by saying she can't help and don't bother her again. Mind you, it was $600. And I knew she had the money because she'd recently got a job that was high enough and she would have been able to pay me. I was shocked considering how much I spent for her, and she continued to refuse, and I even asked whether she'd forgotten what I'd done for her. That's when Ashley asked me how can I say that I cured her when it was the medicine that worked and that I wasn't the doctor. Am I wrong for not showing up to my sister's wedding and calling her ungrateful? I was shocked considering how much I spent for her, and when she continued to refuse, I asked her if she forgot what I did for her. Ashley asked me how I can say that I cured her when it was the medicine that worked and I wasn't the doctor. She said it was the medicines and the doctor that treated her and not me, but I didn't argue. When the wedding date was fixed, I told her I'm not coming, and she was surprised and asked me why. So I told her I have better things to do with my time than attend weddings of people like her. And just for context, the wedding was being paid for by our parents and the grooms. She got mad asking me what my problem was and said she wants everyone present. She also asked me not to insult her. I said she insulted me by brushing away everything I did for her and extremely ungrateful for not helping me with the money when she could have. I never even asked her back for the money I spent on her, but she had no humanity at all. In the end, I didn't attend her wedding.